Oh my god. Okay, well. Hello, this is Epic7. We sincerely appreciate the interest and support of all heirs who have continued their adventure with us in Epic7. With this balance adjustment, we plan to implement changes to 16 heroes, 4 artifact, and system changes. These changes are scheduled to take effect on October 24th, which is actually about a month from now. I'm really surprised they surprise dropped this on us, actually. Usually they drop this about 2 weeks before, but not only did they give us the biggest buff in the history of the game, they also gave it to us a month in advance so you guys can prepare. Now, this one is a huge game changer for some, and actually not that big of a change for others. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's get right into it. So yeah, that is the list of units getting buffed, and the list of artifacts. I had a chance to look at them briefly before I knocked out last night, so let's go over them real quick, and from a competitive standpoint, what this means, right? If you are top of any competitive ladder, mostly RTA, because that's what my content revolves around, what that means for you. So first up is Ruele. Her S1 heal is now AoE, and that makes it better for her to build on counterattack, so you can just play her slow, play her maybe even base speed, play her with like a turn 2 Harsetti play style, and now she'll be super hard to remove and super annoying for your opponent to deal with. Number one actual buff they gave her though is now whenever you give something a barrier and you heal and you fully dispel all their debuffs, you give them damage limit for 2 turns. That is the Galililius buff. For 2 turns, you heal them fully, give them a barrier, and also they can't take more than a third of their HP. Now, if you heal a squishy unit, they're going to take something like 5 hits to remove. That's actually really, really nasty. So that is huge. Her S3 now at the start of battle gives her the Spirit Lord's protection buff, which I believe in other games is called stuff like Guardian Angel or whatnot, right? Basically, there's no turn limit on this, at least it doesn't say so, and whenever she dies, she will revive herself at half health and gives herself 50% combat readiness. That's pretty nutty. So what that does is, especially the plus 50 combat readiness, means now you play her as the default reviver. If you need something revived, you play her. If you want to make sure you go through some cleave, go through some single target nuking aggro, and you survive, you play Ruele. And the really important part is that when she gives herself damage limit, she's actually pretty, not immune, but you can no longer kill her with stuff like Galililius, you can no longer kill snipe tanks with Galililius, same with Genua. So if you have a lot of damage decrease, and your unit survives a big nuke, on the next rotation, you can just completely block them out. And if they try to nuke your Ruele first, she actually revives herself and CR pushes herself. This actually plays super well into her kit. It's just a lot of synergy. Like, a lot of characters, when they get buff, right, it's not something that works super well with their kit, but for Ruele, it does. Now, she still has a very strong weakness in that she lacks a lot of tempo, which means if characters are fast, they do a lot of things on their turn, they extra turn, Ruele just can't keep up, and I still think that's a problem. But with buffs like these and characters like Harsetti, I actually do think this game now slows down a lot. Now, this is something I really like for this patch. Whenever something slow gets buffed, right, an equal amount of fast things now get buffed. So Silverblade Aramintha is next up on the list. The first thing they buffed her for is now the AoE detonates burn effects. This is great, because that means whenever she's going and she lands some burns, it now no longer triggers things like Designer Lilibet. She applies them, and then they're gone. The big thing now is at the start of battle, she now gains attack proportionate to effectiveness. So that's kind of like Black Swan in Honkai Star Rail. Rate of the increased attack effect does not change, so kind of like Fire Ravi, right? That's how that text reads to me. And when an ally except the caster ends their turn, increases combat readiness of the caster by 15%. I don't know how many of you guys are reading this. That is insane. This is the first character in the entire game to be a bridge which if you don't know what that means, I'll have this video linked somewhere in the description or pinned comment. What that means now is no matter what happens, if your Rand goes, your Sea Phantom Politis goes, your Peyra goes, your, oh, God forbid, your New Moon Luna goes, she will now immediately combat readiness push herself. If you play a lot of Rand or Peyra, you are going to want to tune them to 30% because she gains 15%. If you play a lot of Sea Phantom Poly, you could probably do the same because, to be honest, you're going to be able to go fast afterwards anyway, and you push back the enemy. So you're going to want to play her fast, high effectiveness, and then that's going to scale into her attack. That might actually be something that completely push her over the edge, but this is a huge buff for her. I don't know the overall viability, because as you guys will see later, there's actually a character that's specifically designed to beat her. Next up is Last Rider Krau. There's only 2 lines they're changing. One, whenever he takes an AoE attack, he's giving a barrier to all allies now for 2 turns. That is big. And the other thing is now, whenever he uses his ultimate, it's going to decrease the skill cooldown of all allies by a turn. And that increases its own cooldown by a turn. Don't worry about it, because he'll also decrease his own cooldown. This doesn't seem like much, but do you guys know how broken this is? Because, number one, this is a lot like Laya, right? So you can now decrease everybody's cooldown. What that really does is it makes him a default Knockwool counter. He's already pretty good against Knockwool when Knockwool first came out, and I played her a lot. Number one annoying thing to play into is Last Rider Krau, and now he's only better in that matchup. On top of that, just imagine this with me for a second, okay, guys? You are playing whatever units, right? You play whatever you want. You can think about it like a Gala Lilius. You can think about it like you're playing Genua. You can play Death Dealer Ray even, right? Now, after those characters go, your Laya reduces all their cooldowns by a turn. And then your Last Rider Krau reduces all their cooldown by another turn. Like, I actually think this is a character you pick with Knockwool now, and then you just like double bind, reset, and seal them. It's pretty gross. Like, this is going to enable a lot of really stupid combos, and I'll go into that again later. It's a pretty big game changer. I have to say, like, it really depends on where you land in the draft, but basically being able to reduce skill cooldowns is a huge buff, and we're not even halfway yet there. By the way, guys. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. Next up, Commander Pavel. Only change they did for him was change his soul burn, where now the increases damage dealt. This seems like a nothing burger, except it depends on how much damage they give him. One of the most important things they did recently for the metagame was release Empyrean Elena, and she basically just, give the old base halt to every single defense penetration character. And if you look, Commander Pavel happens to be a defense penetration character, okay? If this damage increase lets him kill things through Empyrean Elena, that is actually a huge buff. Like I cannot be understated how big of a buff it is. It still sucks he works as a fighting spirit character, so Sea Phantom Politis will still punch him in the balls, but it is what it is. So this is one of those buffs where we're gonna have to see if it actually does something. Okay, so you guys know how they buffed Silverblade Aramintha, right? And that was really broken. So, let's buff Designer Lilibet in order to counter her. They put defense break on her S1. You can soul burn it and 100% of the chance, and then, extend the defense break for 2 turns, right? Whenever she procs her passive, it's now going to give her not only increased defense, but immunity for a turn. That's huge, because a huge part of playing Designer Lilibet is you cleanse all your debuffs, you see our push, but their bridge catches you, right? Like, you don't push past their bridge, and then their bridge will do like something like stun you or kill you anyway. So it sucks. So the increased defense now means you can't be killed through it, and the immunity means unless they somehow can strip again, they're really not doing anything for you. So Designer Lilibet is actually super solid now. Now her S3, the ultimate, This is a pretty big one because this now increases combat readiness of all allies, including herself, and then also penetrates target's defense by 50%. And of course, it scales to her defense as well. What this does is now it not only gives her a lot of return kill potential, right? Because as you guys know, like, this is a character you play into heavy debuff cleave. You play into control. She is going to heal back up a lot from her golden rose if you have that. If she has a damage artifact, like if you're running something like a portrait, right? To that effect, it's going to let her hit a lot harder. So it's going to do one of two things. If you run a damage artifact, you will now very reliably one-shot a lot of these cleave units. Or if you are playing against something like a very heavily anchored down cleave, like, for example, that one Death Dealer Ray cleave, right? Where it was like first pick Death Dealer Ray, and then they pick a lot of speed imprints. And Death Dealer Ray was only the anchor, right? So if you have to fight against that, she's a lot stronger there in the end game, especially if you're playing her on like a Golden Rose and she can actually like slug it out in the end game, 1v1, 1v2. She's going to be pretty annoying to deal with. So what if she's Designer Lilibet's the new problem? She's a little bit too strong. She's got too much damage, too much self-sustain. Don't worry, guys. We now have Twisted Eidolon Kayron, the actual freaking buff. Once again, based on the body, do you guys see how much is getting changed? So, number one thing that's getting changed is that the counterattack is purely AoE, and they bumped up the increase if he's counterattacking. I shouldn't need to say how big of a change this is. This is great because it really solidifies a niche for him, right? Characters in Epic 7 aren't bad because they have weaknesses. They're bad because there's no defined strength that lets them be playable. And this happens to let him be very playable as somebody where you want to pick him into characters that will AoE you, will trigger your counterattack, that don't have a lot of max HP. Designer Lilibet happens to be one of them. I can see this version of Twisted Eidolon Kayron being played to counter characters like that. The other thing they did was, for his passive, whenever his fighting spirit is full, it will increase the combat readiness by 100%. Which means if he's ready to party, he will let you know it is his turn to go. That's pretty significant. Next thing they did for him was, okay, they decreased the damage on the ultimate, they bumped it up by a turn, they increased the amount of souls to reflect that the cooldown is changing, but very, very big cooldown. The fixed damage, right? You know, the way his ultimate works is he slaps his hand into your entire team, and it does some fixed damage. It used to be 2,000 up to 10,000. Now it's 5,000 up to 15,000. 15,000 fixed damage on top of how much he's already doing is a lot, okay? And this is going to be really good into a lot of characters right now, especially characters that are good anti-debuff, because they don't usually have very high HP, right? Designer Lilibet, I mentioned, was one of them. Sylvan Sage Vivian is going to be another one of them. Oh man, like, just off the top of my head, there's so many things that he's actually good into. Navy Captain Landy, like, this actually puts him into full kill range for Navy Captain Landy now. This is going to be a great default solution, and as long as you play that heavy sticky ER style, he's just going to stick around forever, and then the moment he's ready, shoots himself to the top of the bar and just drops it on something for 15k damage. It's actually going to be so annoying if you play a slightly longer game. And you know, important thing here, guys. Very, very important thing. Also, I just realized. Big thing. Gala Lilia's banner is coming back. Her side story is coming back. So if you plan on playing Twisted Eidolon Kayron, make sure you pick up a copy for her, because I don't know how much that side story is sticking around for. This patch is coming in a month from now, okay? Make sure you keep that in mind. Alright, obligatory Melissa buff. She got some damage increased in her S2, and they changed her exclusive equipment to give her a self attack buff when she's doing her little extra turn combo. Normally, this is, I think, stuff that could matter and could make her see a lot of play, But compared to the rest of the patch, I think this completely buries her. But if you're a Melissa Cleaver, let me know how this changes your game plan, because I mean, I think it would have mattered, but in 2024, it's kind of hard to justify playing this over any of the other characters we mentioned, right? Next up is Sez. So now he's looking like he's going to be the character where he deals damage proportionate to target's lost health. He's an executioner now. And the big thing is his little extra attack that he does with like the dark spikes, right? That comes out of the ground is going on his passive, and that's going to be a connector. It's going to be a bridge. And when an ally, except for the caster attacks, and the target is HP is 30% or less, it's going to activate said extra attack. It's got a cooldown of 3 turns. So this actually kind of kills him for PvE, and now he's going to be a specifically PvP exclusive bridge. It's going to just let him hit all enemies and then CR push himself by 30%, and then he'll be able to nuke something. My issue with this is that it almost makes him a little bit too close to Closer Charles, where I just don't think they do enough in the game in 2024. Fully willing to accept that, you know, I could be wrong, but it just doesn't seem like there's enough that they do to be able to punch through some of the recent characters like Albedo, like Crimson Armin still played a lot. It just doesn't seem like enough damage, especially if you need like something to be less than 30% HP and you need to be comboed in with other units. There is going to be a lot of synergy with his allies, but I'm not feeling too good about this one. Hopefully like the damage gets somehow tweaked a little bit where it's actually pretty decent, but I will see. Next up is Elena. So Elena's exclusive equipment, the cleanse got actually moved from her ultimate to S2, her passive. This is huge because the earlier you can cleanse and the earlier it goes through, the more likely that activation will give you value. It's actually a huge thing because even after the buff, after this exclusive equipment, a lot of players are still running Doctor's Bag on their Elena, and this is either going to help them cleanse 2 debuffs, like through some character's soul burn, or this is going to let her move to a different artifact. So it gives her way more build variety, and it's going to make her more unpredictable and harder to play against for aggro players. So overall, your opinion might change, but I do think this is a very balanced patch, and both sides got a lot of toys, but it definitely is apparent to me Smaugate is trying to slow down the game a little bit and bring both players to, less volatile games where players are trading hits. This is the next one. Okay, where do I even begin, guys? So, to start, he's now immune to all debuffs which prevent movements. Stun, sleep, fear, all of it, right? As an aura, your enemies also can't counterattack. Actually, allies can't counterattack either. Only he gets to do that. His Elbrus is still here, but after counterattacking, he now has a 100% chance to use Sacred Blessing, which got changed. Now it's on a 3-turn cooldown, and it gives Skill Nullifier once to all allies and increases speed for him for 2 turns. I actually think this is pretty significant. But have you guys noticed, this is, super insane, right? It is only the passive. And for a passive called Absolute Dignity, I think, oh man, okay, that is Absolute Dignity now. That's so many things, and it's just the passive. So, let's go over what else he has, right? So now his S1, damage dealt increase, defense breaks, and ignores effect resist of any target with max health lower than the caster's max health. Which means if he's hitting into anything that's not a mega tank, right? For example, Elena probably still be able to shrug it off. Senya, Dragonbright Senya will be able to shrug it off. Blood Moon Haste most likely still shrugs it off, right? But things like Death Stina, Death Dealer Ray, including every single bruiser in the game, every other bruiser, probably can't do anything versus this. They're just gonna have to eat the defense break. But here's the big one. His ultimate now inflicts fear for 2 turns. It's gonna heal him, and he's also going to defense penetrate the highest max HP enemy by 70%. And also, it's going to ignore ER of anything that has less HP than him. So that is pretty insane. So Fear is going to be a new debuff. Basically, it's a stun for multiple turns. But at the start of your turn, you have a 40% chance to self-cleanse it. I would say this is like a combination between Pokemon Sleep and Freeze. It's meant to be multiple turns, but if you're lucky, you can get out of it early and start acting, right? Now, the way I see this work is this is something specifically balanced to beat Laya. Now, as you guys know, it is super hard to play debuffs over Laya because she'll be able to, anything that stops her from moving, from attacking, right, is one turn in the game. There's very little things. There's like Galililius, or not Gal, Conqueror Lilius S2 Soul Burn is the only thing that you can reliably use as far as meta characters go that can, hard CC her for 2 turns. With Fear, this is going to be something else that you can do to basically stop Elias. Sweet Miracle is only going to lower it to 1 turn, and then you stop her for another turn. Now, the reason why I think Mort is going to be pretty stupid, and Legend tier gameplay is subject to change because it's always very optimized, but can you imagine, like, you play Mort, right? Obviously, people are going to want to play him on Destruction set because all bruisers get the most value out of Destruction set. But I actually think Mort is going to be a speed set character, right? And the reason why I think that is I don't think you're using the critical hit damage to do that much damage. Like, it's not going to matter as much as the fact that he's gaining speed buff for 2 turns, and then you're using it to fully defense penetrate your enemy's tank, stomping them, and then fearing his entire team. I think that's probably where he's going to be at, where he just plays this fast cycle bruiser. And especially when I was looking at my gear too, I noticed almost all bruisers have moved off of speed set, right? All of the old characters you used to build on speed set, HP percentage, crit damage, right? Stuff like a Ravi, Ed, all got moved to things like destruction set, injury set. So this is actually a huge comeback for a speed set bruiser. And think about it, right? You play him fast, you stomp the enemy team, you inflict some fears, right guys? And then your last rider Krau goes, and then you're on 3 turns cooldown. Well, you're on 3 turns cooldown from passing your turn, right? And then your last rider Krau goes, you're on 2 turns cooldown. And then your Laya goes, and then you're on 1 turn cooldown. Like, and then like by the time they self-cleanse their fear, like, welcome Barack. It is time for the Great Mortelix, right? So like, there's actually crazy amounts of like stupid combos you can do. But there's one really glaring issue with this strategy. His name is Death Dealer Ray, and we can go a little bit more in depth about this down the video. So yeah, and he even gets an exclusive equipment that extends his speed buff duration to 3 turns. I actually think that's pretty dumb. But I don't think this is the one you take, by the way. I don't think this one. I think you take S3 damage. But moving on to Yulha, which is another Earth-based knight. So now she got 2 things. Her ultimate got decrease in cooldown, makes her easier to cycle. Her soul burn now increases in damage dealt. That is actually pretty significant. She used to have like an extra turn to lower her cooldown. Now it's just lower by default, and it increases damage dealt. When attacked, reflects 40% of damage back to caster. And I think this is what they did so well with this patch, right guys? Normally they buff something like the Death Dealer Ray, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do versus this? Like, there's nothing in the game that deals with this, right? I actually think this is meant to deal with a Mort buff. Because, first of all, when she's attacked, she reflects 40% of the damage suffered back to the attacker. Makes her pretty good versus like stuff like this current Mort, any AoE hitters, right? That's low HP. Lionheart Surmia is a pretty big one I can think of, right? And then on top of all that, right? She's good versus Galililius now. You can't use Galililius on this character unless you're down to trade 1 for 1, right? So it actually does a good bit. So I actually really like the direction of this one. It's a simple buff, but it's effective. Blooming Lidica, her skill 3 defense penetration went from 0 to 100 to 50 to 100. What does this mean? It means she's now playable with Harsetti. I think Harsetti came out to not a lot of, critical acclaim, we can call it, right? She's a very she's almost like a too fair of a character by 2024 standards. She doesn't do enough bullshit, right? So you kind of have to toss her a bone, give her a few default combos. The reason why you can't play Silverblade Aramintha is it still looks like she's combat readiness pushing at the end of a character's turn, which is still their turn, and you can't CR push anything on Harseti's turn. So this is looking like the default character you play Harseti with. So yeah, we'll have to see how this changes up the game. Okay, auxiliary lots, round 2, Electric Boogaloo. This is Tristan Wolf's last battle. Holy moly. So they're actually trying to make him a PvP playable character. The things they're doing is they're giving him a built-in AoE defense break, which is huge. And the other thing they're doing is they're giving his S2 exploiting weak points. That's a buff you get from Riza Hawkeye, and I think you also get it from one of the other Aidens? I'm not sure, but you get it from Riza for sure. And this is really simple. For a single attack, you do 20% more damage. That's it. And they're also bumping the cooldown up to 4 turns, which, admittedly, not great if you like playing him for your PvE. I know I do, but I know if you play him a lot, it actually also really limits design space for characters in PvE, so if they really wanted to gut him for that, I can't blame Smoutgate, right? But exploiting weakness and attack buff together is really strong, because this increases damage dealt by 20%. Damage dealt by 20% is not the same thing as increasing somebody's attack by 20%. Mathematically, it's a lot closer to increasing somebody's attack and crit damage up by 20%. So if you really wanted a simple way to process this, his S2 now increases attack by about 70% and crit damage by about 20%. It's actually pretty nutty. So they're trying really hard to make him a PvP character, right? You're gonna soul burn 80% defense break into the enemy and then boost anything to just one dab some, like the entire enemy team for an insane amount of damage. Do I think he'll be playable? I think he will still be very susceptible to faster units because his base speed simply just isn't very fast. Can you play him in a lot of combos with third pick band protection? Hell yeah. And I think he's particularly good with the Bloodblade Kayron draft, the BBK draft, especially the ER BBK. If you've seen the YouTube short I made or the video, you know she is everywhere in RTA right now. Oh boy, this is going to be one of those super annoying buffs. But who knows? Maybe people will fight for him to stay a PvE unit again. So we'll have to see. Oh yeah, and because they're fully reworking him, you're going to be able to get a recall. Fair exchange, I'd say. Okay, Peacemaker Furious. You know, okay, I'm just gonna say, like, off rip, that he was a bad character before. I don't think this improves him by too much, so it just might be a for fun unit, or if you really like him, right? Number one thing he does is, he will always get his extra attack if he has buffs on his turn. It makes him more reliable, because he's a focus character. His ultimate is supposed to be, like, this big skill that you build up towards, and before it was like a 40% chance to extra turn, and now it's just guaranteed if he has buffs. And he does give himself buffs, give himself speed and defense increase for all allies. It's actually not nothing, it's fairly significant. And you can even soul burn it to increase this by another turn. And now, because he lost Indomitable, you can now play him with Empyrean Illinav to get Indomitable up. So that's cool. Now his ultimate, instead of having to jump through all of these hoops to penetrate defense by 60%, he just does it naturally. Now, do I think this is very good? Against Empyrean Illinav? No. Played with Empyrean Illinav? Potentially, yes. So we'll have to see how this goes. This is one of those units you're gonna have to test to see if he's good, before you can make an informed opinion. Oh man, okay, let me get a drink. I'm actually getting parched talking about this. Jesus. Veronica is up next. They're just boosting her combat readiness push by 30%. It goes from 20 to 50%. And this is just meant to make her better versus Bloodblade Kayron, because Bloodblade Kayron is everywhere right now. The only concern with this is that Veronica is usually a character you play with faster strategies. I don't know if she's supposed to be playable if you slow down if you're a turtle. So this is going to require some testing. But I can say safely, at the very least, if you are a fast player that's just getting cooked by a slow ER or BBK, this will help out a lot. Next up, Armin. Armin's single target damage increase, well, damage decrease, got increased from 20% to 30%. Wait, this is not... Okay, it's still 25% chance to counterattack. I think the main issue with her is that the counterattacks in 2024 just doesn't do enough to help you win. The number one issue with her is, like, she can be counterattacking into units like Abyssal Euphine, Genua, Navy Captain Landy, and I guess now you even have threats like Fenris, where it doesn't help enough as much as it hurts, right? Because Fenris is mostly played with Ran, and he brings immunity, so I don't think it does, like, enough to protect your team. Mainly because the counterattack just doesn't do enough. I think if Armin wants to be a playable character, her counterattack, first and foremost, actually needs to do something. So this one, not too significant. So after that, this is where we have our artifact buffs. These are all pretty simple and clean. Cruel Mischief. I know Tristan Wolf's been talking for a while now that it just doesn't increase your attack by enough. Now it goes from 15 to 30% to 20 and 40. Now your main DPS should just be running Cruel Mischief almost 100% of the times, and your supports are supposed to run all of the support artifacts like POS, Small Card of Miracles, yada yada, right? Like Holo Trial stuff. You don't have to worry too deeply about it if you just want to play PvP. Okay, Pure White Trust now gives 10 souls flat. 10 souls is always good. I don't know about you guys. Anything that gives 10 souls and doesn't necessarily take away from something, all should see some semblance of play, okay? And now it also has a 50 to 100% chance. Well, that's always been around, right? Like 100% chance to increase critical hit damage for 2 turns. Only gives you souls once, but this should still be a really strong artifact. Now, this is 2 things. One, it gives the Hawk souls, which lets him play aggro pretty effectively again. Is that how I think this artifact's going to be used? I don't think so. I actually think this is your default Bruiser, Mediator, Choleric artifact. Mainly because now you can play Bruiser, Choleric pretty aggressively with the souls, and he actually does a lot of damage with the increased critical hit damage. So I kind of want to see him pop up a little bit, because, you know, now that he doesn't really have a spot as a support, Laya took that spot. He actually does need a little bit of support, and I'm kind of surprised to see Smougate give Bruiser Handguide the support. Not something I'd expected to see today, I'll be honest. RNL is pretty good. It gives 10% extra attack now as a stat stick, but at the cost of extra turn being reworked. So what happened, if you read down here, I might as well just skip over a little bit and talk about this. So they're reworking extra turns, and now basically only 1 extra turn can be obtained at a time. You can't, like, just extra turn into extra turn into extra turn, right? Even with the way that RNL worked before, if your character gave themselves an extra turn, it's not a 20% chance to activate an extra turn, right? If you did the math, it's a 36% chance to get 1 turn, and if you got 2 turns, right, you know, it's a meme in the community, right? 23-11, 2-3-1-1. Your Ran presses skill 3, skill 2, skill 3, skill 1, skill 1, right? If you guys seen that meme, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It feels awful. So I like changes like these because, one, it raises the power level of your artifact, but at the same time, it lowers the randomness in the game. And I think this is like a great buff for it, because it raises the baseline level power level of the artifact without, you know, just giving characters more chances to hit the extra turn, which I think is pretty annoying to play against, to say the least, right? And, ooh, Hostess of the Banquet. This is going to be significant because this is Galililius's artifact. Her banner is actually going to be rerun real soon when you are watching this video, if you're watching it the week it comes out. And on top of all of that, it is one of the best artifact, if not the best in slot artifact for Twisted Eidolon Kayron. You're going to want to put him on this artifact and a good lifesteal set. That's how you want to be playing him. So make sure you guys grab a copy of that. And on top of that, actually, before I forget to mention, increases effect resistance, already nice, but now when attacking increases damage dealt by 5 to 10%. And then if you're healthy, it increases the damage by even more. This actually makes it to basically be the best BBK artifact as well. It is now the best in slot artifact for Twisted Eidolon Kayron and BBK. I guess with the limited event returning, make sure you guys pick up copies of this, and depending on how much you play BBK and how much you play Kayron, you might actually want to use all of the bottles we've got from the Epic Dash on this. But holy fuck, this is a huge patch, guys. This is gonna be a meaty one. The update on October 24th is gonna be insane. Okay, I'm actually really excited. I don't know about you guys, but I speak for myself, and feel free to confirm for me in the chat if you guys feel this way too. For the first time in a long time, I'm really excited to play the game. Like, you know, normally I like RTA. I like a good hour or two of RTA, but I'm actually really excited to see how the game gets changed up. So let me know what you guys think. But, you know, before we go, I'll tell you guys a few main points of concerns, right? Because I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, right? If you guys just want to be excited. But I'm cautiously optimistic because Smilegate doesn't have the best track record when it comes to actually balancing the game. So number one, the entire patch reads like a huge A Tywin buff, because every character either wants to be played with A Tywin, like Twisted Eidolon Kayron, or like SBA, where you really want to pick A Tywin against them, right? So Kayron's, or A Tywin seems like he just got better in the game. The other concern is none of these units actually deal with Death Dealer Ray, who is widely considered the strongest unit in the game at the moment, because he just does so much, right? You can play him as a healer with Guardian Ice Crystal. You can play him fully as a high effectiveness debuffer. He cleanses too if you run Potion Vial, because he can extra turn and he'll cleanse 2 debuff by default. It's actually kind of toxic. Nothing is addressing Death Dealer Ray. But that being said, I think unless you are playing for Legend rank, you're at the top of the rank charts, and most opponents will have all the characters, if not all the good characters in the game. I don't think there's too much for you to worry about, as we have just gotten so many toys for people to play with. I think overall this is a great buff, because even if stuff isn't a complete game changer, like the one I'm thinking of is Melissa and Cez, right? They're not complete game changers, but they're still nice, and they're going to be interesting toys for people to play with. But obviously, the crazy one is Mort, guys. So really excited to see how he's going to completely shift up the game. You know, Harsetti, we just got Harsetti yesterday at the time of recording. She's already changed up the game in very interesting ways, because she kind of really messes up the speed for a lot of people. She screws up people's speed tunings. And now Mort, I think he's actually going to be more fair than people think, because he also blocks his allies from counterattacking. So that's something to think of, right? When you have these like floodgate units, like blocks out all counterattacks, blocks out all speed, but for both sides of the map, I actually think it's pretty fair. So let me know what you guys think down there. Shoot. I don't know how many of you guys are seeing this the day this video comes out, but we are going to be doing a tournament on twitch.tv/Valky, and we're raising money for charity for Typhoon Yagi victims. Yeah, pull up. If you can join, still make it. We got a huge prize pool going. Make sure you guys show up. It's going to be a good time, okay? But those are my thoughts on this patch. It's coming in a month from now, so you guys have time to prepare, okay? But, yo, seriously, guys, consider this, okay? Fully deck selector your Mort. I actually think he's worth it now, okay? It's crazy. All right, anyways, have a great one, guys. See ya.